That's it. Okay, that's good. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our weekly webinar on a Friday at midday. I'm going to be saying a few words of welcome, and then I'm going to be handing over to the team from G4C. So very exciting week this week as we hand over to the young people of Constructing Excellence, our future, as the title would assume. We are expecting a lot of people again today. So if you could just bear with us, that would be appreciated, as we've just opened the doors, and obviously we want to let people in. We are running, as we do now, Slido. So Howard and Abraham, maybe you just want to put the Slido details up on the screen so that people can begin to check in, because I know we've got a survey coming up very shortly. So
it's on the right-hand side of your screen.
So it is. I beg your pardon. My photographs are. I do beg your pardon, Howard. My photographs were covering it. I never know where to put the photographs on these Zoom calls. They do tend to get in the way, don't they? So we've got. We are expecting a few more. So if you could just bear with us, ladies and gents, while we give it another minute or so, and then we'll kick off. But yeah, if you could go to the Slido, there we go, LM260221. No secret that is Leaders Meets with today's date, so that's easy enough to follow. Well, it is 3 minutes past, folks. I think it's probably appropriate because we've got a very busy session today, so I think it's appropriate that we do start. So very good afternoon to you all. My name is Andrew Carpenter. I am Chief Executive of the Structural Timber Association and Constructing Excellence in the Midlands and the Southwest. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to this week's webinar, being brought to you by now the whole of the Constructing Excellence Network, along with the CIOB Southwest and Structural Timber Association. I'm going to hand over now to Howard, who's going to give the house rules. And then that's going to be it for me today. I'm handing over to the team from G4C. So good luck and thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Good afternoon to everyone. Yep, we'll be using Slido again today. For those of you who haven't used it, you can access it two ways. Firstly, by going slido.com and then using the hash, or you can use QR Reader. You can use it split screen, but a lot of people use it on their phones. We'll be using it to do a poll. We'll be using it also for Q&A. So if you have any questions, please put your questions in the Q&A on Slido. And at the end, we'll be reading actually running a feedback survey on your feedback from today's session. So if anyone has any questions, you can always put those into the chat pane. But I'm going to hand over to Mitch, and he's going to take it from there. I think we're going to be doing the Slido poll straight away afterwards. But over to you, Mitch.
So good morning, well, good afternoon, everyone. So firstly, I'll just touch on what G4C is. So it's a young professional voice of the UK built environment. It's an opportunity for young people to get together to meet one another, have a similar sort of mind. And what we do is we get together and host events and CPD tutorials and recognise people for their achievements within the industry. We publicise a lot of the big initiatives that come out, and we basically try and get young professional voices heard. We're going to go straight into the questions on Slido. So there's 5 questions, and I'll just read them out. And if you don't mind, if you can just go on and vote. So the first question is, how did you get into the industry? Obviously, we just want to see what sort of route was that, whether it was an apprenticeship, a graduate scheme, a traditional route. Have you considered leaving the industry in the last 5 years? Do you think you're valued at work? Would you consider yourself as working in an aging workforce? And are there any opportunities to progress within your organisation?
Okay, Mitch, just before we go any further, we can put the questions up on the screen. So Abraham, if you want to put the questions up on the screen so everyone can see them, and please open the poll.
Thanks for that, Howard.
That's okay. What you'll see is that now it's people, once they've completed it, you'll find that the number come up in the right-hand side right at the top there, so you'll know how many people we've got. In the room at this moment, we've got about 50 people. So let's see if we can get 30, 35 people completing the poll. So please feel free to carry on. Do you want to put the first question up at all?
Yeah, that's fine.
Abraham, yep, just to remind people.
So I think while that just ticks along in the background, I think it's probably worth just getting the discussion underway. So what we're going to do is we're going to bounce a few questions around and have a bit of a discussion. So the first question is the different routes into the industry, and whether that be technical apprenticeships, degree apprenticeships, traditional routes, or graduate plans. And I'm going to pass you over to Holly, who's a co-chair. Well, I'll let her introduce herself. So Holly, do you want to just pick up on that?
Yeah, so as Mitch said, I'm co-chair with Mitch for G4C North East, and I'm currently a design manager at Bowman & Kirkland, so we're a UK national contractors. So I've been with Bowman & Kirkland and in the construction industry 2.5 years now. My route in was very traditional. I did sixth form, I got my A-levels, then went to University of Liverpool and studied architecture. I did a 3-year degree there, and then upon graduation, I pretty much started work straight after. So my route was pretty traditional into the industry. There wasn't actually the option at the time to do that as a 4-year placement with a grad scheme or anything like that. But yeah, that was my route in.
Brilliant. Josh, do you want to just give yourself a bit of an introduction?
Yeah, hi there. I'm Josh Hodder. I am the deputy chair of G4C in the Southwest, and I'm also a senior project manager in the Southwest for Highways England, working on major road infrastructure projects. So for me, I never actually wanted to get into construction. I kind of fell into the industry. I didn't go to university. I finished my A-levels and just wanted to get out, and I wanted to get into the world and work. I didn't really know what I wanted to do either. Considered joining the police. I ended up working at Bristol Airport in operations, and eventually got sucked into the development of the airport and worked on a number of development projects. And I was put through some qualifications, developed a real thirst for development and making physical change, and seeing the tangible benefits of the work that you do there for years to see. So from my perspective, and I know this may be a bit controversial, but I would say not going to university for me was the best decision I ever made. Because it enabled me to work and earn money whilst my company funded my qualifications, and actually it gave me the chance to learn on the job and develop that experience, instead of actually doing a focused degree and then getting the work experience. I was able to learn and do the job at the same time. Something I really enjoy doing. So yeah, I wouldn't say that necessarily the traditional route of getting a degree is always the best route. It certainly wasn't for me. There's loads out there. There are apprenticeships, there are degree apprenticeships, and there's plenty of ways into the industry. So that's me.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Josh. I'll pass you over to Ben now, who will introduce himself.
Thanks. Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Hole. I am one of the new co-chairs for the G4C Midlands group, and I'm a quantity surveyor for Faithful and Gould. Actually in the office today, which is quite a nice change, quite a rarity these days. I actually came through not the traditional route as well. So I joined as a trainee straight from A-levels. and similar to Josh, really, I feel like it was a really good experience to be working while training, to get the practical experience alongside the, I suppose, academic knowledge of the industry. So I found that particularly helpful in developing in that way. And I think, as Josh said, there's plenty of apprenticeships and those kind of routes which are really good for employers and for the people that they're bringing through. So yeah, as co-chair for the Midlands, that's one of our, I suppose, aims, is to get to that next generation of people and bring them into the construction industry. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks a lot, Ben. And finally, myself. So my name's Mitchell Galloway. I'm a project manager at Newcastle City Council. I started work there at 16. I did my ONC, HNC, HND at college, and then went on to do a degree at Northumbria University in quantity surveying. So I've transferred to the dark side now in project management. So yeah, so I kind of decided to go down an apprenticeship route. I felt as though it was probably more suited to my personality. Learning on the job was definitely something I liked doing. Hated reading and going and sitting in a classroom, so it wasn't really much for me. And I thought it was a really good way of getting experience, and I've actually been involved in numerous different projects, and at the minute I'm actually involved in testing and vaccination programs with the City Council, helping out the NHS. So completely different to my normal construction job, but it just shows you that you can get thrown into different things if you have got a bit of experience. We'll just move on to the next point, because I think that was a really good sort of wide range of different routes in, and it shows that you don't always decide that you're going into construction on day one. Sometimes you just fall into it, and sometimes that's a good thing. The next point that I wanted to talk about was COVID-19 and the response, how we look to recruit. Now, I think I'm going to ask Ben to kind of just head up this point and discuss what he thinks about that.
Yeah, so I suppose there's sort of 2 points to that question. Response to COVID-19 covers a wide variety of things in terms of site operations, to people that work in offices, to all the different roles within the industry. And I think one of the most important things, of course, is to keep up to date with the latest guidance, the latest legal requirements with health and safety, both for employers and employees. And ensuring, as the industry has been for many years now, just that continual striving for improving health and safety for everyone that's involved. Because of course everyone should be safe. That's point number one. But it helps productivity. It minimises absence. It assists in many ways. I suppose coming on to the specific sort of recruitment question is the way that the industry has had to adapt to this new way of working. People are working remotely. People are working socially distanced if they're on site. People are, you can't see anyone's face these days, can you? Because everyone's got a mask on. And one of the key things I think for the industry is to ensure that it's keeping up to date with all of the latest requirements in that way, and continuing to innovate in finding new ways and better ways to do things in the light of everything that's going on. And so there is a huge need to recruit to keep everything moving. So I think the key thing in response to COVID-19 is all about safety. And then the secondary point to that is innovation in ensuring that everything continues as well as it was, and if possible, even better, and continue to find new and better ways to deliver what we need to.
Perfect. Thank you. Holly, do you want to just jump in?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. Yeah, totally. I think since COVID-19's hit, the industry is being forced to change, but I think it's for the better. I think we've now realised as an industry that we can adapt to more flexible ways of working, which I thought the stigma's always been, you know, I know it's difficult sometimes on site hours and things like that, but I think recently we've had to step up and, you know, in terms of schools being closed and people's childcare, social distancing on site, the industry's been forced to change, but I think it's had to change for the better, really, because I think it's shown how we can adapt, and that we can be just as flexible as other industries. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Brilliant. Josh?
Yeah, I'm actually really proud of how the industry has responded to the pandemic. It felt to me that the deepest, darkest times of lockdown, you know, the streets were flooded with effectively emergency workers and, you know, and the construction industry. And that it felt like that was all there was there, you know. Hospitality was all shut down. People were locked in, but construction was continuing. And I think that was, you know, in part driven by the government's ambition to keep the construction industry open at all costs, really. Obviously complying with the regulations where possible. So no, I think it's something we should all be proud of, because we've really, you know, managed to keep things going, and that what that does that may not have been the case previously, but what that does is it shows that we, as an industry, we're able to offer that job security that you may have thought you'd have with other professions until the pandemic hit. And in terms of recruitment, I suppose that plays out as well. So we're now, I've been part of a recruitment campaign recently, and you know, all of the interviews are remote interviews, and we're not just employing people who are going to be working on site. So actually, what that does to us and what the changes have meant are that we can attract people from all over the country, in fact, all over the world, and they don't need to relocate necessarily to undertake the job in a certain area. It's not all about being on site. You know, we've got designers and we've got you know, various different professions working on projects. You don't actually have to be on site. So that opens up the whole world in terms of candidates to be working on projects and not having to move. So that's a huge win, I think. And I think there's going to be you know, we're not going to go back to how it was. This has had a structural change to the way that businesses think, and also the way that employees think as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I think the office environment's going to be a very different beast when we go back. I think we look to work in flexible environments and stuff like that moving forward, and I think that is probably one of the things that is best about the construction industry. I mean, we've managed to reduce our carbon footprint quite heavily during the pandemic, which has been good. I think the next point we're going to touch on is the importance of a supportive employer in and around mental health within the workplace. I'm going to throw this at Holly to start with.
Yeah, I think in terms of mental health in the workplace, I think that construction has really stepped up again more recently than anything. I'd say it's become more apparent to the industry even in the last 5 years. And I think it's something that's so important, especially for us as young professionals, to keep at the forefront of an employer's minds and keep that importance, because as soon as we kind of, you know, we work in a challenging industry, and as soon as we take a step back and let things build or whatever, it's just going to continue. We need to be that kind of driving force to make sure that, you know, the way we work and the, you know, the pressures we have and everything is monitored going forward. I think that overall employers need to work together with the employees, you know, to check in. I know there's been, since lockdown, there's such a, you know, an effort to check in on your friends, checking on your families, and I think it's something that employers need to constantly, and probably have had to do across the lockdown. it's affected everyone massively, outside of work as well as internally. But I definitely think it's something that the industry is improving on, especially in terms of having named mental health champions on site as part of the team now. It's just as important as your health and safety manager. So yeah.
Brilliant, thanks. Ben?
Yeah, so absolutely, I agree with everything Holly just said, that there really has been a stepping up over the last few years, and especially over the last 12 months with all the pressures that have come on. 'Cause there's no doubt that at times the construction industry, you work under pressure, and that I suppose is naturally the case in any job. But there's been particular progress made, certainly I've seen, in terms of in our offices that we have allocated mental health first aiders, they're termed, planned sort of mindfulness sessions in the middle of days, and more than anything else, just the awareness that people that are particularly more senior members of staff are trained to spot the signs of someone who's struggling with pressure, who's maybe just not quite right, and trained in how to deal with that. And I think it's really important that continues to grow in the minds of everyone that's involved, so that we're all looking out for each other. At the end of the day, yes, we all have a job to do, but more importantly, we're all people who are coming to work and that shouldn't be something that is detrimental to the rest of our lives. And I think it's the whole concept of having a supportive employer is essential to that, and that is starting to play out very much so in very practical ways, which is important. It's all very well talking about it and having webinars and sessions and so on about it, but it's when you get those practical steps that are in place to spot the signs, to know how to deal with someone who's struggling, and how to help them. That's been really good to see recently, and really important to continue developing that across businesses, across sites, across offices throughout the country.
Brilliant. Josh, do you want to just come in and finish?
Yeah, sure. I think I'd echo everyone's points. Really, I think not just construction, but society in general is becoming much more aware of mental health and what it means, and the kind of from an employer's perspective, that the cost implications of having issues in the workforce. But I would say that I think construction has in the past probably had a real lack of awareness in terms of mental health, and a lot of that probably comes back to the fact that being on site, a manly bravado kind of atmosphere, and I think that has that's changed quite substantially over the last decade probably. But it's really getting in. It's really ingrained now into the way we work. It's becoming business as usual. It's not just a bit of bit of the soft stuff on the side. It's actually the way we work, and I'm really pleased to see it. So.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. 10 years ago, we wouldn't have had a mental health champion within the workforce, and now we do, and it's right. The next point that I want to touch on is gender neutral construction industry. And actually, one of the stats that was quite interesting was in Q2 of 2020, we had 1.9 million men in construction, whereas we only had 289,000 women. However, that is greatly been uplifted in the last 10 years. But I suppose the point I want to make is what positive actions have been taken to close that gap. Actually, I'll start with Josh.
Yeah, sure. So, I recognise that. I think, and I think we can still all see it when we go on site. There are definitely more blokes than females on site. It's just it's the way it is at the moment, but it's something that we want to try and influence. We want to try and change. Again, I think it comes back to that the legacy of sites being a manly manly kind of atmosphere, and people who may be seen as slightly different don't necessarily, may not have fitted in the past, and now actually you're really seeing you're really seeing the kind of integration and a more diverse workforce. I think there are certain areas of construction where you have you have actually potentially female dominated areas. So what we're doing to improve this? Well, I know that there's some really great work that's being undertaken by the likes of women in construction, and I think what we need to do as an industry is probably focus more on the younger generation, because actually, unless you fall into the construction industry later on in life, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to influence at that level. But I've got a daughter. Do I think that she would be interested in joining the construction industry? Probably not. Probably not. It's something that I think we all need to work on to be able to make it an attractive place to work, and somewhere that doesn't seem threatening or intimidating. We need to make sure that it's kind of available for everyone.
Holly, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, it's apparent that obviously the misconceptions of the industry that it's male dominated is certainly dropping, and and the stats are going up day by day. But I think for me, there's a lot of marketing, I think, and there's a lot of teachers and people that influence students at a young age, that if they're a woman in construction, it'll look really good because there's not many women in construction, so it'd be great if you were. And I think that's not how we should be marketing it. You should be marketing the industry because you've got the right skill set for the industry, or it's suited to you because you're creative, you like working as part of a team, all these kind of things, and all those transferable skills we need to start embedding from a younger age. I think as much as there's a lot of support, in terms of NAWIC, which is great. I'm involved with NAWIC, and we do a lot about promoting the industry to young females and trying to retain current females also that are in the industry. But I do think the industry as a whole needs a bigger push on teachers' parents also, who have a massive influence on what their children do at GCSE, if they go to college, the career routes that they go down. And I think, certainly when I was young, if I said, I'm going to get a job in construction, my parents would just think that's, bricklayer or whatever. There was no knowledge around the other roles and, the variety of opportunities that are available. So yeah, for me, I think it's definitely improving, but we do need a bigger push on the skills and the benefits of the industry, not just I think should join because the number of women in construction is going up, and I think that's the wrong way to market it personally.
Brilliant. I think this next point will probably tie in well with is the aging workforce. And actually the industry is struggling to attract people. We've got some really sort of negative statistics around how much of an aging workforce we've got in the UK. And I'm going to pass this over to Ben, who's probably going to touch on that a little bit more. But actually, if you can just touch on as well the stigma behind education, especially secondary education. And that if you're a naughty lad, you go in the wood shop, and that's what it is. It's always been considered, even when I was at school, and that wasn't that long ago. That it was you got pushed into construction if you were no good at anything else, and that's not what we should be. That shouldn't be the message that we're giving to people in secondary education. Definitely not. There's definitely a lack of knowledge in the opportunities that are available within construction. You could be good at maths, and you wouldn't find a route into quantity surveying, or program management or anything like that. So I'll pass over to Ben, and he can talk a little bit more.
Yeah, so there's there's quite a lot there to talk about. It's so it's a theme I think that would come up around most of these questions. It's about education. It's about from an earlier age, getting people at school age to understand exactly like you just said, that there's a huge range of opportunity, a huge range of skill sets needed within the industry. It's not, the example was just given, it's not just someone who's a bricklayer. And there's even a misconception there, like that there's an element of skill required, absolutely, with all of these on-site jobs. It's not just you fall into it because you can't do anything else. But there's such a huge range of skills required that needs to be shown at an earlier age. And that involves us that are in the industry already, getting into schools, doing the careers fairs or whatever it is, from an earlier age. And then exactly as Mitch was just saying, the aging workforce issue, that's part of the solution there too. That I think it's something around 20% of workers in the industry are over the age of 55, which means that in reality, in 10 years' time, there's going to be a lot of slots to fill. And so we need to be looking at that now. There's no point in 10 years' time thinking, oh, hold on, where are all these people coming from? It needs to start now, and it is starting. But I think there's a huge way to go in terms of getting into schools, primary schools, secondary schools, and removing that stigma that it's not an industry that is only for those that either aren't academic or aren't skilled. It's not that at all. There's a huge range of skills that are needed, and a huge range of skills that it can offer. The scope for development, both personally and professionally within the industry, is massive. So yeah, I think that's the fundamental point, that we that are in the industry already need to take it on ourselves to change that image as much as we can from an earlier age.
Yeah, and I think as well, it shows that it's a changed environment in the fact that 20 years ago we wouldn't have needed this laser scanning materials, we wouldn't have been using drones to carry out surveys. It is a changed environment, and new job opportunities become relevant with the times, I suppose. In 20 years' time, we could be in a different wave. We could be doing something completely different, especially with modern methods of construction and the housing shortage. We are going to be looking at different sort of avenues. Holly, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. So yeah, I think all that is like massively important. But I suppose the other angle of it is that as an industry, we need to make sure that older generation are getting the training that they require also for the new staff coming in, and the students that are coming in. Are they up to date on the current university courses, college courses? The skills that they think the job entails might not be what you necessarily learn at college or uni or whichever way you come in, if you're not doing an apprenticeship route through the company. So I think it's also important that they're supported as well. It needs to be a collaborative effort. Yeah.
Brilliant. And Josh?
Yeah, so it's a huge one, and if we don't do something about it, then the ship's going to sink. I think it goes beyond just trying to attract the young people. It's actually, when you're at the age where you're making career-defining decisions in terms of your education and what courses you're doing and all that kind of stuff. The biggest influencer there is likely to be your parents, unless you're like me and you kind of rebel. It's likely to be your mum and dad, and actually it's their perception a lot of the time of the industry, not necessarily yours. So I'd be interested to hear how many people join the industry from a young age with parents who are in the industry, and those who joined the industry at a young age with parents who weren't in the industry. And I bet there is a bit of a there is a bit of a kind of a pass down of you know, if you're in the industry, you may well be interested because your parents know about it and know that it's not all about bricks and sticks, and there are some really exciting prospects out there. So there is loads to do, and we've got a problem. We've definitely got a problem that we need to address. But I'm not quite sure what the solution is there. I think it's wider than just getting into schools. That's absolutely really important, but it's also about selling the benefits of the industry, and the fact that I think one of the statistics I heard recently was that it's the second best paying industry to the finance industry. If you ask someone on the street, they're probably not going to know that, but actually there is loads to do, and yeah, there's a fair bit of work we need to get on with, I think.
And I think one of the good points, which I'm going to ask Holly to speak about, and one of the attractions might be changing working patterns. So Holly, do you want to just come in and talk a bit about that and what flexible working might achieve?
Yeah, I mean, for me, as I said earlier, I know the industry's had to change massively since COVID-19, but I think it's, as you say, it's shouting about those benefits. You know, I think at college level or GCSE level or whatever, certainly there's a lot of industries now that offer flexi time working and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like you hear about all those companies when you're at school. You know, when I remember being at school and it was, oh, if you work for HMRC, it's you know, it's flexible working hours and it's this and it's that. But I didn't hear, you know, for me, I just thought, oh, well, construction will be, you know, 7:30 till 6 and that's it. And there's no leeway there. And I think that's definitely something that attracts people, especially now with the way the world is. I think we need to be flexible. And I think, yeah, it's definitely one for parents, you know, not just because of COVID-19, but I think there's often, you know, even in the last 10 years, probably been not as many people joining the industry because of the fixed hours and because of the way construction, you know, is perceived. So we need to shout about all those things and about, you know, how well of an industry it is paid, and you know, all the opportunities like this, all the forums, all the committees, all the, you know, we do work together quite collaboratively, but I don't think we shout about it enough.
Ben, do you want to just hop in?
Yeah, so I mean, certainly COVID has caused a shift in working patterns, but I think there's a wider shift going on already around technology and digitization of a lot of roles, a lot of well, not roles but tasks. You know, usually there's an app for that now, but whatever you're trying to do, and if there isn't, then someone somewhere is building one. And that presents a huge amount of opportunity for innovation. There's a huge amount of innovation going on about changing the way we do things at all different levels across the industry. So yeah, as Holly said, it's no longer just turn up to site at 7:30, go home at 6, and that's it. There's a lot of change happening. There's a lot of development going on that is going to change the way the industry looks in the next 10 years and the next 20 years, and that needs people investing in it. And there's people within the industry investing in it, and there's people coming into the industry to assist in those things. Things like modern methods of construction, off-site modular buildings is a big thing at the moment. And those changes as they happen always present opportunity to anyone that's looking for them, that's looking to develop the way the industry works.
Brilliant. And Josh?
Sorry, I was muted there. Yeah, I echo what's been said, to be honest. I think we need to we need to put much more focus on it, and and let people know that there's a wide range of opportunities in the industry, and there's this stereotype that people have in their minds, that it's very difficult to challenge, because you need to find a way of speaking to people and getting them to actually listen to you. And it's a huge challenge. It's something that we do need to focus on. I don't have the answer.
But I think part of the answer is G4C though, and I think the reason that is there is it's a multidisciplinary group of young people who can talk to that audience and educate them about what opportunities there are, the struggles, the benefits. It's a great platform for G4C to get out there and speak to people who have been in the same situation as them not so long ago. And I think that yes, there's a lot of different things that can happen, but G4C could be a way into that, into the schools, into the education, into speaking to young people about what a good industry it is to be part of.
Mitch, can I just add before you move on? Just there was a comment in the chat about young people don't feel it's a secure industry to work in. And just about shouting about those benefits, I think we've got to remember construction's been one of the only industries that's been allowed to continue throughout the pandemic, which is something that it's a great achievement, and it's something that should be well known. And it is secure. I think at the minute there's definitely a struggle in the trades, and bricklayers and things like that, getting students interested in those roles. And because there's that shortage, that there couldn't be a more secure route for students to go down if that's what they're interested in. I think things like that we need to really shout about.
Almost like a trade for life, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm just weird because of time. So we're just going to go pop over to Slido, and I'll pass over to Howard, and we're just going to kind of get the rest of the questions out there, I think, because it'd be really good to get some feedback. So Howard.
Should come up in a minute. If you can put the results up, Abraham. So that's your first question then.
That's interesting. Well, we'll share this information afterwards. But yeah, no, that. So the second question, Howard, can we? And the third one? Interesting. The fourth one. And finally, the last one. Thanks for that, Howard. I think that was
really positive feedback to get there.
Yeah, no, there's some interesting comments there. So we've got 15 minutes left, so I'll leave the last 10 minutes for Q&A. We'll just touch on a couple of points that I did really want to raise. And one of them is climate change and the carbon neutral agenda, and how as an industry and as young professionals, we need to try and get over the message that it's important to not always look at the cost, but also the impact we are making to the environment through project delivery, and also our own personal sort of ways of life. So I'm going to start with Ben on this one. I know it's a very, very broad question, and it can't really get any broader, but have you saw a shift in your working practices at Faithful and Gould and within industry? And then do you think there's any positives to come out of that, or good practices really?
There's definitely been a shift with the net zero carbon challenge nationally. There's been a shift, particularly within our clients' agendas, that increasingly so it's creeping up the list with every project and every sort of program of works that they're thinking about is what's the carbon impact. Some examples of good practice that I've seen. Some businesses, client organisations have introduced their own internal carbon tax. It is something I've come across, which is a really good idea. That the less carbon your project uses, the more funding you get. It's a very simple idea, but it works. And I think increasingly so, businesses are looking at sort of life cycle, whole life cost of projects, and considering the overall impact, looking at alternative methods of construction, looking at embodied carbon within the materials that they're using and looking at other options there. And I know we don't have long to talk about it, that's just a few little ideas, but there's definitely a changing attitude, and it's essential that people engage with it, not just by saying how important it is, but by looking at practical things that can be done. And you know, when we're advising our clients, making that a factor in all of the advice that we give. What's the carbon impact of each decision? So that's the change that's starting to happen. It needs to happen a lot more. We know that the construction industry is known for looking at the bottom line figure, and that attitude still needs to change. It can never fully change, like that's always going to be a factor, yeah. But highlighting carbon and the climate agenda as a whole is increasingly important.
And Holly, from a tier 1 contractor?
Yeah, I think obviously it's such an important issue, you know, the carbon neutral agenda. I know, especially in the Northeast, we're wanting to, you know, be the best region by 2030. Not just in terms of sustainability, but other things. But I think for us, there definitely needs to be more of a push on not just using sustainability as a tick box exercise, in terms of, you know, BREEAM and other bodies such as that. I think sometimes it can be just, if we do that, we'll get some points for it. And I think as the industry as a whole, we need to look at it from a wider perspective and how it's actually going to impact not just our company, but, you know, the region and the country. I think especially at G4C, Construct Excellence, there's a lot of work focusing around sustainability and the carbon agenda. But I think from a company point of view, there's definitely more that can be done in terms of looking at the way the supply chain procure and things like that. I think it's definitely room for progression.
And finally, Josh, and then we'll dive into some questions. So just
yeah, sure. I'll try and keep it quick. So I think it's really exciting, you know, the times we're in. I think big organisations, clients are actually just being forced into this. It's societal. If they weren't taking it seriously, then they would be held to account for it. And the public is certainly on side with the climate agenda. So it's something that maybe it's cynical of me, but I think that they are being forced into it, and I think that's a good thing. But I also think that it's a good thing that it's filtering down to projects, and it's a real good hook for us, because as an industry, we're able to appeal to the younger generation because they can make a sustainable change to the way things are built. And the younger generation, typically, I'm not going to say the older generation don't, but the younger generation are really switched on to the climate. They're really switched on to the impact that we're having on the environment. So being able to become involved in an industry that's taking it really seriously is something that can really attract people to the industry.
Great. Right, we're going to dive into some questions then. So I've picked out the first one. So from Andrew, we'll go for So if you could change one thing in the industry overnight, what would it be? So I'll start first. Procurement. And I say that because we still look at the bottom line from a cost point of view, and we don't always consider the wider added value that can be brought to a project, and that's coming from a client. Yeah, it's still too much of a focus on the finance and not what the benefits of the project could be in the wider sense. Josh?
I would say there needs to be a lot more focus on outcomes as opposed to outputs. So taking a stand back, looking at the project, what are you trying to achieve? Can it be achieved in a more effective way? You know, and again, it comes back to value over cost. I think doing things, looking at the reason you're doing it, and then assessing whether you're doing the right thing in the first place. Really challenging scope, I think.
Holly?
I'd probably say the reluctance of change from quite a lot of businesses and I suppose people in the industry. I think in terms of innovation and technology, we're quite behind the times and behind other industries. And for an industry that's consistently evolving and working, I think, you know, we should really be at the forefront of that. So I think, yeah, I think the kind of attitude towards innovation and technology.
And Ben?
Yeah, all good things. So one slightly different to those would be, I think, in terms of collaboration, everyone talks about collaboration. Everyone says that we're going to collaborate and that we're great at collaborating, but do we actually do it? I think is a deeper question. And I think one thing that needs to change is, and it comes back to, I think, all the points that have already been made, is practicing collaboration rather than talking about it. It comes back to the value over costing, I suppose, that instead of using a number to, you know, a client to beat a contractor with, or for a contractor to try and get out of the client, actually let's work together and do something that's actually worthwhile for the future.
I think we've got time probably for one more question, if there is any. Someone wants to hop in and ask one.
Questions on the Slido, Mitch?
Sorry,
I've got a lot of questions on Slido, Mitch.
All right, sorry. Do you think degree apprenticeships will become one of the most popular routes into our industry now? I think so. I think it's a pathway, isn't it, into the industry that organisations can latch onto. If we can make the process easier for them to get degree apprenticeships in place, then why would they not use them? Especially with the apprenticeship levy out there at the minute. Has anyone got any comments on that?
I think it's a really worthwhile route to be going down. So yes, I hope so. I think is one answer to that as well.
Definitely makes for a more, you know, rounded future generation of construction, because they've got more experience. That's, you know, I joined straight from university, and I thought I knew everything I needed to know about architecture, and it wasn't the case at all until you get that site experience. So I think it's invaluable, and I think it definitely will be, if not the most prominent route in to the industry.
Yeah, I hope so. I do worry that it could be potentially cost prohibitive for organisations, but you know, if there is some way of subsidising that cost, then you know, fantastic. I think it's probably one of the best ways in.
Another quick question then, Howard. What about working up through the ranks without traditional qualifications? It's a good question. I think in this day and age, it's hard to progress without certain qualifications or accreditations with certain organisations. I mean, just for instance, the RICS. That's kind of a must-have in some of the professions within the industry, and I think it would be hard to progress if you didn't align yourself to a certain outfit. Holly?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, unless you know someone and have got into a company that way, I think without having academic study or qualification, as you say, it might be more difficult. But as an industry, I think, you know, if someone came to a business and said, I'm really interested in construction, I really want to work really hard, I've got these skills, you know, I enjoyed doing this at school, I think as an industry we should be, you know, looking to grab those people that are excited about the industry and wanting to get involved. And we probably need to do more to reach out to those people.
Josh?
Yeah, I tricky one. I mean, I'm not quite sure I get the question. Does it mean no traditional qualifications from the very beginning? Because certainly that's where I came from. No traditional qualifications for quite a while, until I got my foot in the door, and I've still not got a degree. I've got a postgraduate diploma, but I've not actually got a degree. They're just kind of qualifications you pick up on the job. So I don't know. I think it's probably one of the best ways of getting into the industry personally. It's worked for me, but yeah, I can see what you mean. If going through the ranks with nothing is probably going to be quite challenging, because it does open doors along the way, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to start off at the very beginning with everything.
Yeah. I'm just wary because of time. So I think it's been really good, and I'd like to thank the panel for the discussion. I think on a separate note, if people do want to ask any more questions, more than happy to take them via LinkedIn, or we can circulate some details of the panel following this. But I want to hand back to Andrew, who's going to wrap things up. But thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Special thank you to you, Mitch, for taking over the hosting job today. You did a fantastic job. And also thank you to the panelists, to Josh, to Ben, and to Holly. I think the question or the statement I would make is that it's really exciting for me as someone coming to the end of my career in construction to see that it's in such safe hands. And in particular, within Constructing Excellence, to see that we've got such a fantastic movement of young people who want to push the agenda on in such a positive way. So on behalf of all of us, thank you for what you've done today, but more importantly, thank you for what you're doing going forward. And I know we've got a lot of other G4C members on the call, including Jonathan and others from Wales. So apology we couldn't bring you in at the last moment. I would like to thank Howard and Abraham at Leaders Meets. They do a fantastic job for us week in, week out, hosting this event. So please do accept our thanks, chaps. And just before we go, just to say that we've got a really good month coming up for you to build on the success to date. Next Friday, we're looking at the topic of insurance, which for many people is a really big issue at the moment. So if you're interested in insurance matters, that's next week. The week after, we're going into marketing speak, and we're going to look at social media. We're going to look at social media in the world of construction, how to do it, what to use, what not to use, what to look out for, what works, what doesn't work, with a real expert in the field, Peter Haddock. So join us on the 12th. On the 19th, I'm delighted to say we've got Keith Waller from the Construction Innovation Hub as our guest speaker. And then we finish the month on the 26th with a whole hour about urban regeneration. We've talked a lot about COVID-19 today. What effect's that going to have on the town centre? What's it going to do to offices, accommodation, and so on? So if you're interested in urban regeneration, that's the 26th. Please do fill in the survey on Slido. Give us some feedback on what you've heard today and what you'd like to hear going forward. But for now, it's just after 1 o'clock. And on behalf of us all, I'd just like to say, have a fabulous afternoon. And I hope the sun is going to be shining. We're going to have a great weekend. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.